Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Where are we today? Come on, you guys know where we are today, and that right there is the Death Star. Hey, listen, we have been down here fighting at a public hearing on House Bill 1163, and I got all my good friends here with National Association for Gun Rights. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's see about how do we fight legislation to take your Second Amendment rights. Okay, Washington, we are down here in Olympia, Washington today. It's a beautiful day outside. It was an ugly day inside, however. We had testimony on House Bill 1163. Now, the good folks from the National Association for Gun Rights were kind enough. They sent 3 representatives out here. They're actually running around Olympia right now, dropping off 3,000 petitions for every single member of the Washington State Senate that was signed by lawful and responsible gun-owning Washington residents opposing House Bill 1163. So I want to thank all of you for that. Now, as you know, today we had public testimony. I'm not going to go through all of it. We're going to put the link for TVW down below so you can geek out on it for yourself. But a few highlights. Number one, our brand new Attorney General decided that this would be the first ever bill that he decided to publicly testify for. That's right, Attorney General Nick Brown was here to testify in favor of House Bill 1163. Now, he was asked a really poignant question by Senator Phil Fortunato, which is, hey, by the way, how many gun crimes are actually committed by lawful, responsible gun owners in the state of Washington? Attorney General Brown did not have that data, and candidly, anyone who supports this legislation would not want that data because it would completely disprove the effectiveness of this legislation. Now, for those of you who have watched these types of testimony on gun bills before, you know that it is the same old playbook all the time. The orange shirt army shows up. They all get up. They all have horrible stories to tell. I'm not taking anything away from the horrible circumstances that they've all had to endure. But where they never connect the dots is how this legislation would have prevented that tragedy from occurring in the past. They have absolutely no connection. They have no causal connection whatsoever. They have no arguments in support of it, and that's, of course, because this legislation, well, it wouldn't solve any of those problems. Now, would it? Now, there was a significant amount of testimony, however, from women who were domestic abuse survivors, and all of them were pretty much united in their opposition of this bill, which essentially is that, you know, it's dangerous enough for women already. Some of them are placed in horribly, horribly precarious situations. Shockingly, that piece of paper called a protection order won't actually protect them. And so many of them were of the position that House Bill 1163 would actually make their lives more dangerous. We had an opportunity to geek out with the Carrie Sloan from We the Female about that. This is what she had to say. Okay, hey, look everyone, look who I got here. It's the Carrie Sloan. 3rd time on the channel, Carrie Sloan.
I'm becoming a veteran.
You are. Now listen, we just got out of the hearing on 1163. Straight face it here for a second, but there was a lot of testimony from women.
Yeah.
Women who had experienced domestic violence. Women who had to defend themselves from their would-be perpetrators. And I don't know if that message really went over well with the committee, but I want you, because there's some real lived experience here for you as well. Explain to the public how House Bill 1163 actually endangers women who are already in danger.
Well, there's a few components of how that happens. Obviously, financially, and a lot of the women touched on that and the financial issue of it, but more importantly, the wait time. And that is a huge concern that I have in particular with this bill, is the added wait time that is already on top of what already exists in Washington State.
Right, because we already got a 10-day waiting period.
There is already a 10-day waiting period that's supposed to be this cooling off period that's supposed to create safety and so on. But adding additional time for a domestic violence victim or stalking victim even who is trying to escape her abuser, time matters.
Yeah.
And
has there ever been, can you tell us about a real life example where a woman was being stalked or there was predatory behavior going on by an ex-spouse or something like that, where during that interim period of time where she's just trying to get herself protected, bad things happen?
I can. Actually, in New Jersey, they have a law that already exists similar to what they want to pass here, which is you have to get a permit to get, basically you have to have permission to buy the gun before you even go to training. And New Jersey has that, and a woman named Carol Bound in 2017 was actually murdered while she was waiting for permission from the state. And she was murdered by her abuser, who ended up stalking her, and her murder and dismemberment was actually caught on the security cameras that she installed around her house while she was waiting for the state to give her permission to buy the most effective self-defense tool. And now we're going to continue to deny the ability for women to protect themselves through more financial limitation and time limitation.
So you don't believe it's hyperbole that this law actually will endanger women who are already endangered?
Absolutely not. This law in itself is a danger to women and their ability to protect themselves, just in general, from the increased crime that's happening everywhere in the state, but particularly for domestic violence and stalking victims, elders, single mothers, any of these women that are disproportionately affected by gun control already. This is going to put them in even more danger.
Now, we did have testimony today from a gentleman who unfortunately lost his daughter to the massacre in Las Vegas a number of years ago, and he certainly had a very gut-wrenching story to tell, and he certainly was in strong support of House Bill 1163, yet he was never able to connect the dots as to how this House bill would have prevented that tragedy. One of the other statistics that got kicked around way too much today was that firearms are the leading cause of death for children in the United States. That statistic is only correct if you include 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in the statistics. If we're going to actually define children by those that are only of minority age up to age 17, no, actually firearms are the fourth leading cause of death for that demographic group. Now, I'm not making light of it, but for anyone to suggest that firearms are in fact the leading cause of death to that demographic group, well, the data just simply doesn't support that. But perhaps the highlight of the day comes from Dan Mitchell of Sporting Systems Dan in Vancouver. Now, if you guys don't know who Dan Mitchell is, my question is, what, you been living under a rock for a while? And no FFL has been more vocal in their support of the Second Amendment and fighting all of this crazy gun control legislation than Dan Mitchell from Sporting Systems at Vancouver. Not only did Dan Mitchell promise that he would be plaintiff number one if this becomes law, but Dan Mitchell gave them a very stark warning. We'll just abbreviate it, which was FAFO. Except Dan didn't use abbreviations, which means today is the first time in my entire career that I've heard an F-bomb dropped at a committee meeting here in Olympia. Okay, like I said earlier, we had some fantastic testimony from the Dan Mitchell right here from Sporting Systems. Dan,
good afternoon.
Fantastic testimony. You've done this before. A little bit of colorful language in today's presentation. Why don't you explain what the motivation was with that?
Well, I was expressing that all of our rights are important, speech as well as our right to keep and bear arms. So I may have had to tune up today's testimony just a little bit to express the real feelings that most people in Washington actually feel about these laws.
Well, there is this level of frustration that's just boiling over with people. You see it at your store. I certainly hear it from my viewers.
Absolutely.
And so you basically told the legislature passed this bill and they're going to F around and find out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. In addition to that, we had Miss Klein from the NRA. We also had a representative from the National Shooting Sports Foundation that was also kind enough to appear in person and testify against the bill. At the end of the day, the testimony was pretty evenly split between those that were in favor of the bill and those that were opposing. Okay, and then finally, one of the most important pieces of data, as you know, at the conclusion of these hearings, we are then informed how many people signed in pro or in support of this bill and how many people signed in against or con on this bill. The pros, that is the people who are in support of this bill, there were 855 people who signed in favor of it. However, those opposed to this legislation, there was over 8,100 people signed in. So Washington, if we're going to take a look at the record here, it would seem that there is overwhelming, I mean grotesquely overwhelming opposition to this bill. Do we honestly think that it's going to stop the Democrats from passing this legislation? Oh, hell no. Of course it won't. And if you don't believe me, take a look at some of the other pieces of legislation they have passed this session already. Okay, listen, we're going to go ahead and link up the National Association for Gun Rights so that you can show them some love. Listen, they got 3 representatives on the government campus right now running around delivering over 3,100 petitions to every member of the House House and Senate showing Washingtonians disdain for this particular bill. So, you know, show them some love. If you guys got any questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you should know how to get a hold of Washington gun law by now. If you don't, that's okay. That information's down there in the description box. If you got an idea for a video we should be doing around here, cool. You click on that link right there and tell us all about it. If you want to subscribe to the monthly newsletter, the ability to do all of that is down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, let's everyone remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation and how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.